All right, welcome back to the shop. Excuse the noise in the background. It's my new little propane heater. It is freezing outside today and raining. We're back on the TA. We are going to put the fuel tank in it today. The new fuel tank straps. We got it warmed up to about 70 degrees, 65 degrees in the shop. It's about 35 outside. It's freezing rain day. Oh, kind of miserable. So, like I said, excuse my noise. We are going to strap on a headlamp, which I thought I had it on, but I don't. We're going to pop this new Tank Inc. fuel tank in the Trans Am. If you look back at the other videos, you'll see where I made up the fuel pump. You have to cut some stuff to size. You got to get your wires through the fittings. And this is the fuel sending unit. We got those all sealed to the tank. We got thread sealer on. I actually used the copper coat on the threads on these MPTs, your quarter MPT fittings for our fuel in and out. Hopefully that'll seal just fine. If not, we'll try something else, but it should be fine. All right, get these old straps down on the for the fuel tank and put the new ones in. Here's our new straps here. Got to cut this plastic in off and get those bad boys in. Have a nice new fresh gas tank. It's never been used. New straps, new fuel pump. Everything's going to be new. Okay, so I hope you can see me. I've got some lights in the background, but I'm up under this car. It's a little dark. We are working on getting these original tank straps down. I just lowered the first one. If you're not accustomed to lowering a gas tank down, I don't know if I took any video taking the tank down. I think I did. You have to look back through the playlist to see. It's been a while because this project's been so spread out. But the way it works, you've got a hook down on this side, and it goes up in and slides down, and then there's a 10 millimeter headed bolt. At least that's 10 mil what took it out on this one. I don't know if that's been replaced. I thought in 1977 we were probably still using standard stuff, but I thought it was going to be a 3/8 and it wasn't. But go ahead and pull this other strap down. I'll give you a view here. So this is what it looks like. It just goes up in, hooks, slides down, and there's your bolt hole. And you can see right there on that guy how that works. And then we've got these new straps that came with the tank, with these Tank Inc. gas tank, which is a really good looking piece. All right, let me pop this one down, and then we'll get the tank up on this trans jack on this board, and we can start jacking it up and lifting it up in there. All right, so these come a little bit wide. The original hardware, this is like a self-tapping hole, so it's gonna just catch it. I'm hoping it's gonna suck it in straight. If not, I'll have to close the gap on these a little bit. But we're gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna go ahead and shove it up in the hole here. Pull it down. This way it'll be nice and loose, so when I get my tank up, I can guide it up in there a little easier. I'm just gonna go ahead and start it. Just where it grabs, that's it. And then I can kind of get my straps out of the way here so I can guide my tank up. All right, I threw some shop rags on the wood just so I don't want to scratch up the bottom of that new tank. I know nobody's gonna probably see it, but you know, sorry, the lights. I know nobody's probably going to see it, but I just don't want to try to my best to keep it from getting scratched up. Very difficult thing to do in your one-man show, especially lifting big, bulky objects. But we're going to do our best here. I'm going to get it lifted up onto here and start jacking it up into place. Usually, I like to throw straps over these tanks. Absolutely, if they've got fuel in them. If you've ever watched any of my videos where I'm pulling a gas tank out and do a fuel pump or something, you'll see where I throw straps, because a little bit of fuel slosh and there goes the gas tank. I mean, it's not going to stay up there like you think it will. It will come down in an awful big hurry. So we're going to hopefully here get this bad boy up. I'm going to bore you with all the jacking. It takes forever. Okay, before I get too far ahead of myself, I was about to just shove this thing up in there. I'm not ready for that yet. I've got to wire this thing up. We've got a sending unit. We've got to get a signal to the gauge, right? We also have wires for the fuel pump, right? We've got to power the fuel pump up. That's okay. I can get to those once the tank's in. But the sending unit, that's the lead right there that goes to the gauge, the factory harness deal, which I'm going to extend this because it's too hard to attach it once the tank's up there. So I'm going to just put a little bit of wire to it. I'll heat shrink it and all that good stuff. And then we got to put a ground right here. So this is the signal coming from the gauge. It goes to this. This is your main signal wire, and then this is your ground. The factory one has a ground wire that's kind of just like tacked on. It's not removable, and it just it went somewhere. I can't remember where it went exactly, but we'll find a location. We'll attach a ground, and so we got to have a ground. We've got to have a lead, and then these two we'll just flip like that, and worry about that after we get it up in there. Because I don't have anything wired up yet, so can't attach wires to nothing. Then we've got vents. Okay, we got two vents. We got 1 and 2. This is like the factory style vent. Could go over to the charcoal canister lines if you wanted to. The instructions say to wire these two together. So we got a vent on the pump and we got a vent on the tank. So we're going to wire these together. We're going to use the vent that came with it. And this has got to be mounted somewhere higher than the filler. So we'll probably mount it up here, something like that, or somewhere around in here. It's probably just be mounted somewhere in this area here, I would imagine. It says you can stick them up in the fender well, but I don't want to be slinging dirt and water and junk at it. I think up above it may go somewhere like right here or something. I don't know yet. We're gonna mount it somewhere high and somewhere out of the elements. We're making up some wiring for this this lead for the signal for the sending unit and for the ground for the fuel pump sending unit as well. All right, so what we've got here is a failure to communicate. No, it's this is where the ground was, factory ground. So I found me an eyelet that fits that little screw, and I chopped off the factory plug because it does not fit down on that threaded post. This is my ground, and I've already made up one wire end. Butt connected it. You know, we're not butt connected, but use my eyelet connector, which attaches with a crimp like a butt connector, and then I put a piece of heat shrink tube over it just to keep it weather sealed, and that'll go right over there, right there, like that, and it'll attach to this one here, which I will also I won't butt connect. I use a solder joint and a heat shrink tube, and then I've already started this wire right here. This is going to be my ground. So this end will go to the sending unit, and This end, sorry it's so close to the camera. This end's a little bigger to go over that screw for that ground. Sorry about the light. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll set it up where I'll show you how I do it. If you don't know how to heat shrink or crimp or whatever. I don't have any black wire. I'm gonna use a red wire for the ground. But if you were to like to diagnose something on this car and looked at that ground and didn't know it was a ground, you don't need to be fooling with wiring anyway, because it's going to go to the chassis, and if the wiring is tapped into the chassis somewhere, it's a ground. Okay, see my hands? All right. Do set this down. I'll take my strippers. Some people like these, some people don't. I personally like them. I can measure off how long I want the strip. I usually go a ½ inch on most of my stuff, and I just start it and I rotate it and then I strip it. And yes, it will. Some people complain that it boogers up the insulation, but it just barely does, and I'm going to cover that up with a heat shrink tube anyway, so I never have a problem with that style. I've had this pair for 20 years probably. It's two-laid, made in USA. I like them. I use them all the time. So I'm going to put my heat shrink tube over first, because you're not going to be able to get it over the eyelet if you do it after. And take a pair of crimps. These are Thomas and Betts. And you also want to look, if you don't know about crimping, you need to look, because it's split. It goes like this. Okay? So you want that part to go up in the crown. You don't want this part to go in the split. Okay, so position your crimp. Position your crimpers in the right position and make a crimp. Okay. Make sure it's good and tight. These little butt connectors don't crimp pretty, but that's part of the reason we covered up with some heat shrink. Now this heat shrink will go over the end, and it's not cut straight, so we're gonna doll this up just a little bit. It will slide over. So what we're going to do, take our torch, start shrinking her down. She looks like she's good and tight. She's good and tight, and stop. Now it's gonna be hotter than fire because you just put fire to it. I want it to be good and tight. I don't want water getting in there and corroding everything up. All right, so I just usually check my ends, try not to burn yourself. Now I've got my ground wire, which may be a tad too long, but it's okay. It can sit on top of the gas tank. There's really nothing up there that's sharp that's gonna hurt it too bad. So I want it a little long because I don't have to stick the gas tank up in there and then fishing around for my wire and my nut and all that shit. I want to be able to put it on, secure it, and then put the tank up. All right, so I'm gonna try to do this without blinding you. Slid over, got these solder joint connectors. So basically you heat these up and the solder melts and it heat shrinks. But I always put a heat shrink over it. And the reason I do that is because sometimes when you shrink these, it burns a hole through them. And I can solder, but I prefer to use these. They're just easier to handle. There's a bunch of different ways. I could just twist this together like this, just go round and round. But a lot of times, if the wiring is fairly the same consistency of braid, you can kind of go like this with them and twist them. And that's how I was taught when I was working at the Volvo dealer, how to fan it out just a little bit. This red wire here, a little coarser than the factory GM wire. See what I'm doing? Twisting them the opposite direction of one another. So it's going like this. And I'm telling you, you could leave it like that if it was insulated and you'd be fine. Because it's locked in like a pair of fingers. You ain't getting it. So now, go back with our torch. So it gets good and hot, that solder will melt in between those wires. And that bad boy ain't coming apart. Hope you can see that. And then I will take my heat shrink, slide it over. I'm going to make a note that there is no gasoline that's ever been in this gas tank, so open flame is not to worry for what I'm doing here. Kind of going around it. I want to make sure it's sealed up good. It's hot. It's hot now. All right. So got soldered wire, heat shrunk, grounded wire, heat shrunk at both ends, and then I heat shrunk the connector for the signal wire as well. And we'll do the same operation on these once we get a wiring harness back here to tap into. But right now, we don't have that. I've also just kind of mocked the vent up. So we got them wide together, and I'll clamp them, and then we'll figure out later. We'll have our, once the tank's in, I can figure out where I want to go with the vent, the little rollover valve, and that's it. So now we're ready. After I put some clamps on these hoses here. We're ready to jack this tank up into position. All right, so put the filler on. Comes with a new filler. The original ones have a hard filler. It's all one piece molded onto the tank, but these are removable. Come with a little rubber section. Didn't come with any clamps. I'm not real sure if they want you to run a clamp. It's a super tight fit, but I had one clamp, so I went ahead and threw that on there. I may go ahead and get another clamp tomorrow. I think I'm going to, just because you can see that just a little bit of flex there in the tube. I don't want it to fill up and overfill it a little bit and it start leaking out and dripping out there. So I think I'll probably go get me a clamp tomorrow at the auto parts store before I raise this thing on up into position. But I think you get the idea of what we're going to do here. We got all the fittings. I got the clamps for my vents, and got everything wired up. And I think this is where I'm going to end it. Check me back in the next video. We'll stab it and move on to the next step, which is going to be the power brake booster, which is Hydro Boost. We're going to have to adjust the rod. I think I'm going to have to cut that rod down. So that's where we're leaving off with this one. I appreciate. So that's where we're leaving off with this one. I appreciate. So that's where we're leaving off with this one. I appreciate you guys checking the channel out. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. Hit the bell notification. All that good YouTube stuff. Come back and check me in the next one. Peace.